Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm really glad to be presenting the topic of cyber liability insurance and why it's so important. And we're really lucky to have a guest speaker, Justin Reinmuth. I've been working with him for years. He's a source of great knowledge, and he's here to help. Once again, we're not going to sell anything. We're just trying to help educate. So I think you all know who I am, right? I've been doing this for 40 plus years. I'm happy to help in any way I can. But I'm going to just turn this over today to Justin and let him introduce himself and take it away. I've put up several questions, but we're really looking forward to answering your questions. So if you have something that we haven't covered or want to jump in with something, it's totally fine. And like I said, we're here to help. So Justin, take it away, please.
Yeah, Jim. No, that's I appreciate you having me on this afternoon, and I'll go over brief background, right? But yeah, I was on the IT side for years, and then Y2K happened, the world was going to blow up, and so everything went offshore, the development side. So me and my partners had decided to just sell the company because that wasn't the direction we wanted to go. And I got involved with insurance back in January of 2004, and really started focus on doing a lot of managed service providers and cloud provider. Like back then it wasn't cloud. Providers and back in 2008, and today we work with just about over 2,000 IT service providers, as well as standalone cyber for MSPs clients. We've been in business now going on almost 20 years. So my goal in this webinar is just to inform people not only the importance of security, but then, if the security, if somehow these bad actors are able to, to penetrate the security or get by on an employee phishing scheme, then you're going to have to react with a cyber insurance policy. And that's the knowledge that we hope to bring today.
Great. Thank you. All right, so let's just jump in and we'll start right from the basics. What is cyber liability insurance?
Yeah, so this is probably a multi-pronged question. I guess I'll start off with, why does a client even need to purchase cyber insurance? Because I think a big misconception, Jim, is that a lot of clients think that, hey, my business insurance policy will cover this. These business insurance carriers, they might cover a portion of the cyber. So what do I mean by a portion? There are kind of three buckets on why a client will come to take out cyber insurance. The first group usually that'll come, they're really worried about PHI and PII. So when I say PHI, Jim, that's protected health information. Right. So obviously a lot of healthcare organizations will keep that sort of stuff. When I say PII, that means personally identifiable information. So social security numbers. I mean, again, that could be a law firm, an accounting firm. I mean, every business out there, has some sort of PII when it comes to, clients' information. So a lot of the business insurance policies, these cyber endorsements, again, this isn't everybody, right? But just in general terms, they cover those scenarios saying, hey, if PHI or PII is compromised, then, we'll give you $50,000 or $100,000 to notify, to provide credit monitoring, to deal with any sort of regulatory fines and penalties. So why that was probably important in 2015 and 16, it's not the world we live in today. The two groups that come to us for the cyber insurance, they still might be concerned about, let's call that bucket A, but they're really worried about bucket B and bucket C. Bucket B, usually a client will come and say, hey, we have, our systems are extremely important to us. We run our business via these systems, whether it's email, whether it's, some sort of database. If those systems, if there's disruption and it causes those systems to go down, usually what's going to happen is there's some sort of cyber extortion or ransomware event. So there is going to be payment to a bad actor that will take place in order to restore your email or your database. So that middle group says, hey, if that happens to us, we need money to pay these bad actors. We potentially might suffer business interruption claims. We might need to recreate data. We might have servers or hardware that might be destroyed due to the ransomware attack. So we need bricking coverage to, to replace that computer hardware. So Jim, kind of that second group that calls us, they really focus on things that are centered around their IT systems. And then the third group is usually they'll call us up because of a cyber crime event. Now that could be a business email compromise. It could be something that happened to a vendor of theirs that didn't have multi-factor on something and they got tricked into sending money. It could just be, something where, the office manager or the person in charge of, the accounts payable just got tricked into sending money to someone they shouldn't have, So, that kind of generalizes or summarizes, what cyber insurance does. A properly, written cyber insurance policy, it protects you against the theft or disclosure of PII. If you transmit a virus, if your systems go down and you suffer some sort of business interruption, or you have to pay the bad guys to get access to your systems again, and then some sort of cyber crime event, if that kind of generalizes things for you, Jim.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think you kind of covered this already. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, here's my answer to that, though. That's a separate question. Is if Jim were to unplug your network today, let's be nice. Let's start it tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you turn it back on at 5 o'clock. How would the people on this call run their business that day?
I don't know.
Where are you going to get the Bitcoin to pay the bad actors? Bitcoin doesn't grow on trees, right? It has to be mined. What are you going to do? How are you going to negotiate with these people? So the importance of a cyber liability insurance policy is that if an event takes place, within several hours, you'll have quote unquote the fire department on your doorstep helping you put out the fire. That's why cyber insurance is a necessity. I saw a statistic, Jim, and I'd love to give it credit. I don't know who it was, but there's two actually I would share. Is one was there was a ransomware attack every 13 or 14 seconds. So I would ask Jim, do you think there were a house fire every 13 or 14 seconds? I would ask the people on this call. I doubt it, right? I don't know those statistics, but I would say if you don't think cyber insurance is a necessity, I would say it's more of a necessity than your homeowner's insurance because there probably isn't going to be a house fire, And then I was reading an article that talked about in the first quarter of 2022, so in 3 months, there were as many ransomware attacks and attempted attacks. It was 80% greater than all of 2021. So just think about that for a second. If there were 600 million attempted attacks or attacks in all of 2021, that means there was over 1 billion in the first 3 months of this year. This isn't going away. Wow. That's why it's a necessity.
So before we move on, I want to just take that question one step further, actually, because clients ask me, you're my IT provider, you have cyber insurance, right? Yes, of course. Why do I need it?
Yeah, let me use a healthcare analogy. I mean, what Jim is to the client is you are the doctor that rented out, the surgery room in the hospital. So Jim, if you do anything that goes wrong in that room, i.e. you cut open the wrong knee, you cause an infection, then you carry malpractice insurance. It's called errors and omissions insurance that Jim carries. The example I would give you is, let's say after the surgery, they wheel that patient up to the 3rd floor of, a New York hospital, and they put them in a bed and it's dirty sheets and they get an infection in their knee. That's not a Jim problem. That's a hospital problem. So guess what? You need health insurance to cover for any cost associated with dealing the infection in that knee, correct?
Absolutely.
So same thing with Jim. Jim doesn't control the email. It's a big company called Microsoft or Google. If Microsoft or Google has a supply chain attack that's outside of Jim's control, that's not a Jim problem. You need to carry cyber insurance because there is a cyber universe out there. Jim will control his planet, but other things that go wrong in the universe, you've got to have cyber insurance for staff mistake, rogue employee, vendors that might go, that you guys utilize for backups or email that they might have a supply chain attack. So Jim's malpractice policy doesn't cover those situations. Does that help out?
Yeah, it's good. Thank you. Okay. So what makes a good cyber insurance policy? And, maybe you can articulate that, because, by the way, everyone, I've referred Justin to some of my peers and MSPs to find that they were dealing with less than adequate insurance policies. So please, maybe you can expand on this a little.
Yeah, Jim, and I'll send you, and I know Chris is behind the scenes controlling a lot of this, but I'll send you guys, kind of some important insuring agreements that they want to pay attention to. So, I want to take a lot of time on this webinar, but, I'll forward it to you, Jim, and you can send it to, maybe if they want to email you and said, hey, we attended this session, then you can give it out. But
Okay.
It highlights, probably 18 or 19 important insuring agreements that you should pay attention to in a cyber policy. And some of them we've touched upon. Like cyber extortion, if God forbid there's a ransom event, you need the money to, pay these bad actors, to get the, access to your email or access to your database. So you need cyber extortion. You want to make sure that you've got network security coverage, which is unauthorized access into the system. You'll want to make sure that you've got business interruption, invoice manipulation. There's some stuff in there that, again, Jim, I'll give you. It'll highlight what the insuring agreement is, along with a definition or an example of what it would cover. So, hopefully the the participants on the webinar will find it helpful. If not, please let me know.
Okay, great. Thanks. Now, I don't know the answer to this. So that's why I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. And the question is, why adding a cyber add-on to your general liability insurance isn't a good idea.
Yeah, so we always ask clients, what's the purpose of this exercise? What do you want to get out of this cyber policy? So, when you have an add-on onto your, again, I'm an insurance agent, right? I carry insurance agent E&O insurance. There is the option to add a cyber endorsement onto my E&O policy, just like a lot of professional services out there. Whether it's your business or your professional liability, usually, not in all terms, usually the insurance limits are sublimited. So what do I mean by that? Most people will start out with $1 million policy. You're probably, if you do an add-on, you're only going to get maybe $100,000. So, if you look at the statistics and what it takes to get out, and it's climbing and escalating every day, you can't get out of a cyber extortion event, industry-wide, right? The statistics say it's several $100,000. So $100,000 isn't going to get you to first base. So, we ask clients, do you want to self-insure $200,000? Because for $2 or $3 grand a year, you wouldn't have to, so the general liability policies, as well as the professional liability policies, they tend to be sublimited, but they aren't as broad as what I'm going to send you, Jim, when we hang up those important insuring agreements. Again, a lot of them will center their coverage around the theft or disclosure of PHI, PII. They won't properly address the cyber extortion event. They won't, properly protect your systems in terms of business interruption. They won't usually deal with the cyber crime event. So usually when a client says, well, what are the two things, or we ask them, what are the two things you worry about? They usually will give us a ransomware event example, or they'll usually give us a cyber crime event example. Neither of those in general terms are covered on, a general liability add-on or professional liability add-on. Even if they do, they might throw in, $25,000. We just had someone that called us up that had a $250,000 whoopsie, right? They sent the money. So again, are you willing to self-insure if your policy says 25 grand for $225,000? For a couple grand a year, you don't have to do that. Most people say, I want to take out a comprehensive standalone cyber insurance policy. That's why it's not a good idea.
Great answer. Thank you. Okay, let's get down to it. What do you recommend in helping people determine how much insurance they need?
Yeah, so anyone that answers this question truthfully is lying, Jim. So, and the reason that I say that is I would ask you, is the ransom going to be 200,000 or 2 million? Because I've seen it both.
Right.
Is the downtime going to be 2 days or 2 weeks? Because I've seen it both. Are they going to encrypt 1 terabyte data or 2 terabytes of data? I've seen it both, right? And you guys know on the IT side, to unencrypt this data, it takes a long time when you're talking about a terabyte of data. If that's backed up, it doesn't happen overnight, right? So okay. I would tell people, maybe err on the side of caution and say, buy more than what you think you need. You could take clients through kind of the PHI, PII example. How many records do you have and how many people will you have to notify? And that you could probably determine a limit. But when it comes to things like ransomware or getting tricked into sending money, again, are you going to get tricked into sending 250,000 or 2 million? Because we had a client in Colorado that got sent 2 separate $1 million wire transfers.
Wow.
So I think the importance of question 5 here is A, address your security posture correctly and do as much as you can, right? Because that will require you probably carrying lower limits. So Jim, what do I mean by the correct security posture? Again, I have to consume IT services like the people on this call, but make sure that you've got multi-factor on email and all remote access. Make sure that you've got, the 3-2-1 segregated backups. This is why you got Jim. I'm just giving you some ideas. Make sure that you've got EDR and active threat hunting. Look at a SIM solution. Look at security awareness training. If you do some of this, the likelihood of a claim happening diminishes greatly, but you got to have the security up front, because by the time you enact the cyber policy, it's like calling the fire department. It's a reactionary product.
So you completely segued into my next question, I believe.
As you can tell, I didn't see these questions ahead of time. So
yeah, right. I know. You think you covered it enough?
Yeah, I think that to your point here, the insurance carriers, they do kind of have their own. Jim, for his clients, probably follows standards like NIST or ISO or COBAIT or CIS. I mean, there's plenty of of government regulations that are there for IT service providers to follow. But insurance carriers, they'll take portions or pieces of those requirements, and they'll kind of create their own standards, I guess, Jim, is what I would say. But a lot of them, they're going to, which is cool as a policyholder, they're going to, monitor the external network. We call them external surface scans. So the insurance carriers, a lot of them have invested in AI and they're keeping track of what's going on. But they'll mandate some of the stuff that I just mentioned, multi-factor,
Sure.
proper backups, EDR, MDR type stuff. Some of them are requiring a SIM to be in there. Again, I know it's technical for some people on here, but my point is that, if you aren't doing certain things, then guess what? The insurance carriers either A, won't write you, or B, they'll write you and say, guess what? We're going to take away the things that are most important to you, i.e. we're going to not offer you, ransomware coverage because you don't do certain security, or we're not going to give you cyber crime because you don't have MFA. So they'll start, removing some of the coverages.
Yeah.
So you have to do with the insurance. If you want a broad policy, you have to take out the security that they're, mandating that you take out.
And just to play off of that, why is it that so many, or not so many, well, some of the insurance carriers are dropping cyber completely?
They don't make money. I mean, if you look at the loss ratios, right? I mean, for every dollar they collect, some of them are paying out $3. So anybody that owns a business, I know I own one, I couldn't keep up that business model very long. And you got to remember, these are, billions of dollars of carriers. So they've got, 50 tentacles that bring them in money, right? So it could be landscaper insurance, it could be bakery insurance, it could be home insurance, manufacturer insurance. So if they're not making money, they'll either, offer it to a select group, right, that they feel will qualify. We'll call it 700 and 800 credit score clients, or they'll just get out of the business. They'll just say, I'm not going to do it. We'll just devote more resources and money at these marketing reps that go out to, offices and tell them to pitch more landscaper policies.
Yeah. Good answer. Thank you.
They're big institutions, right? I mean, they're not relying, just on cyber insurance to make their shareholders happy and raise their stock prices.
Right. Right. Okay. This question is my last, and then we'll see if anybody else.
Yeah.
This is almost, I think this is more for Chris and I, because so many of our clients send us these questionnaires because they don't even, have strong knowledge of what their technologies they have or don't have. But a lot of the questions this insurance carriers put out, they're so vague.
Yeah, they are. I mean,
and we don't really know is partially compliant. If you're doing this type of encryption, but you're not doing that type. It's not very refined. How should we answer some of these questions?
Yeah, so I think it's actually two-part, right? Because to me, your client is doing this in conjunction with you, right? So what I always warn, our MSP's clients is don't assume certain security is in place, right? For example, we'll take multi-factor. You might have multi-factor on email, but you might not have it on remote access. So if you say, yes, I've got MFA, well, not the way that they phrased it, right? So I always tell clients, that are clients of the MSP, don't answer these questionnaires. Get with your professional, i.e. your IT service provider, your managed service provider. And for the Jim and Jim and Chris of the world that do the managed services, I say, answer these questions, and, when they're vague, you get specific, right? So tell them, hey, the way we interpret this question is, yes, they have multi-factor on email. Yes, they have multi-factor on OWA, right? And highlight where they have multi-factor. And then it becomes the obligation of the insurance carrier, the underwriter, to come back and say, well, Jim, this question was really meant also, do you have MFA on switches or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
So then it's on them to get more, specific with you. So anytime it's vague, right, I would make sure that you get specific, and also, acknowledge that this is the security posture at this point in time, and give a date, because that could change tomorrow. It could change in the next week, so, that's the security posture. But for the clients that are on this call, don't ever fill out these questionnaires in this. Don't do it on your own, because, you're not security experts. Even me, I give it to my IT folks and they fill it out, and, they let me know, because while I know that I've got most of it in place, sometimes I don't know if this question, does that particular vendor, oh yeah, Justin, they also do that for you, so, get with the MSP. Don't answer these questions on your own, the questionnaires.
So many of the questionnaires are, check boxes. There's no little place for, let me clarify our understanding of what the question you're asking and how we're answering it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an editable Adobe document, right, I would just put in there, see below, right? And there has to be a section, Jim, where there'll be additional comments, right? Or unfortunately, you may have to reply back and say, we answered yes to question 7. And the reason we answered yes is because multi-factors here, right? So give them, why you answered the question that way. And again, if this isn't if we're interpreting this question incorrectly, please let us know.
Well, that was helpful. It's going to initiate a change in how we respond going forward. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes, some of these questions are, simple yes, no questions, but others are, when you use the word all, how are you defining all, right? We, Jim and Chris, are defining all as MFA on here. We don't have MFA on switches and routers, right? I mean, that's just, set up, exactly what the security posture looks like, and you make that representation to the carrier.
Okay, great. Really good advice. Appreciate it.
And one thing, I know we're done with questions, but one thing, maybe some things that I would tell clients to pay attention to is, the carriers, because, they are paying out a lot in claims, and, some of them are still staying in the business. And I think I would just pay attention to a couple things that I've seen on our that comes through my desk and our email over the last couple months, is that a lot of these carriers, Jim, are getting into what we call co-insurance. So they're adopting a health insurance model where on the cyber extortion, you might have $1 million limit. But if they put on an endorsement a co-insurance clause, that co-insurance might be 20%. So what that means, Jim, is that if you get hit with $1 million ransomware event, the policyholder is responsible for $200,000. The carrier will do $800,000. So pay attention to co-insurance. Right. Pay attention to sublimits. A lot of them are sublimiting important insuring agreements. So instead of the policy might say $1 million, but for a particular cyber crime event, they might only offer $25,000. And then the last thing is more and more of the data that's going to the cloud. Does your policy cover data in the cloud with a third-party vendor that you may or may not have a written agreement with? So those are kind of 3 things that I just wanted to put out there and have clients of yours pay attention to when they're securing a cyber insurance policy.
Great. And just to clarify the co-insurance, I think you probably told me, educated me. Yeah. Typically, the insurance carrier will pay the first chunk, then you have to pay the second chunk, and then they'll carry the third.
Yeah, actually the co-insurance. So let's say that they start out, these bad actors start out at $1 million, and let's say that they settle for $500,000. Then the insurance carrier is going to say, hey, we're going to pay $500,000. Remember, you're responsible for 20%. So you pay them $100,000 or give us $100,000, and we'll pay the other $400,000.
Okay.
So they're participating in the loss outside of their deductible. And a lot of times the higher the percentage, obviously, the more that's coming out of pocket. You know, a lot of organizations, when we talk to them, if they say, hey, yeah, we've got cyber extortion, and we say, are you aware that there's a co-insurance clause in here and that you're on the hook for the $100,000? Do you have $100,000 sitting in the bank? Most of them will say no. And then we say, well, you might not want to pursue that policy.
Okay. Chris, do we have any questions?
Not at this time. You guys must have done a great job.
Well, great. Then let me just move on and say, hey, this is Justin's contact information. If you'd like to reach out to him, nobody's going to call you. Nobody's following up, you know, no sales. But if you would like to reach Justin, please feel free. Just give you a second in case somebody wants to write this down.
And my goal, Jim, was honestly, I think if we keep more people more than 25 minutes, I don't know, it's a beautiful day in Columbus, Ohio. If they're not golfing or doing something else, we're going to get bad reviews on it. So I appreciate us keeping it to a half an hour, because insurance, while it's interesting, it's, you know, it can put you to sleep if we go too much longer.
Yeah, great. Okay. And most people know our contact information. So I'd just like to thank everybody for joining today. Any questions for Justin or Krantz Secure? We're here to help. And have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Oh, I didn't thank you, Justin. Thank you so very much.
Oh, no. I appreciate you having me, Jim. Enjoy your afternoon.